Netflix has released a docuseries on the missing case of Amy Bradley that has literally taken the internet, taken the world, taken everybody by storm, and we are diving in today.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. So y'all, I've still been going strong with Hungryroot, and let me tell you what, I'm loving it, and it's literally like Christmas every time it shows up at the doorstep. I am in heaven, okay? Now lately I've still been trying to like really dial it in with my diet, and so I want to go over today, show you some of the high protein, like clean nutrition things that I've been making for this past few weeks. Everything's super fast, it's high protein, it's easy to prep, and now whether it's a full-blown meal or grab and go snacks for hikes, busy days, whatever, Hungryroot keeps me covered, okay? So what exactly is Hungryroot? Well, let's talk about it. So Hungryroot's a personalized grocery and meal delivery service that helps you and me eat better with way less hassle. And their smart cart system, that's like how they figure out like what you like and whatnot. You do a little survey at the beginning of it, a little like quiz. This starts to make personalized picks for you, this type stuff, so it learns you, okay? So not only has this helped me save time, but money too. Now another major thing with Hungryroot that I love is they send you this like, it's a list, okay, that's all it is. But in the back, it shows the recipes. It says Paul's recipes for Tuesday, August 5th. And it literally just goes off here and it tells you how much, what's in it, the whole 9 yards. And so you'll build your staples like I have, right? There's some go-tos, and I mean, obviously I don't, at that point, I know how to make them. But then you'll get new stuff to try, and then obviously you can experiment and stuff like that. So like one of the things we're gonna be making here that I have fallen in love with is the super basil bean pasta salad. Y'all, 9 minutes to make, okay? Like, yeah, so these are the ingredients for the first meal. Very simple, boom, 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 boom. Now, like I said, when I first signed up for it, I took that little quiz with the smart cart and literally just handled the rest of the suggestions for me, and it got started fast. And again, most of these recipes, like when you're cooking, are minutes to make, y'all, okay? They also screen out 200 additives, so there's like a level of ingredient trust that you build with them. Y'all, I've already snuck in a taste test of this, but I'm gonna break it up into little lunches for me. Y'all, this is so good. It's so fresh. It's such a great little summer thing. And look at how easy that it was, and look at how healthy it is. So let's put this to the taste test, y'all. Amazing summer vibes here. 10 out of 10 would do it again. Now, another thing that I love about Hungryroot is the pre-packaged, ready to go, grab and go type stuff, right? This is my little backpack that I take on like longer hikes with me. Luke's ready to go. He's all packed up. I've got my ice in there, and I literally just I know they're sending these things to me. I put them in here. I stack them in here. Isn't that cute? I mean, the little beef jerky. And so I know these are coming each time, and I love it. It's simple. I throw it in here for myself, my friends, and it's just, you don't think about it. You just go. So I'm gonna make a very quick, fast, simple Caesar salad with nuggets, dressing, lettuce. Let's do it. Now this is where my little ninja machine over here comes in very handy. So we're gonna do all these nuggets. Oh my gosh, they look so good. Look at that. Now keep in mind with my offer, you're going to get a free item in every box for life, like a premium protein, a veggie, or a sweet treat, something like whatever it is, you know, you're gonna get it and they're gonna hook you up. For a limited time, you're gonna get 40% off your first box. So just click the link below or go to hungryroot.com, use code SOFASQUAD. That's 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice in every box for life at hungryroot.com with code SOFASQUAD. Now, y'all, these turned out amazing. Y'all are gonna scream when you see these. I mean, these are just beautiful. Look at that. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? Now y'all, I wanna give another shout out to Hungryroot for helping make this video possible today. Be sure to check out all their stuff. It's down in the description box below, or use that QR code on the screen. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. We got a sofa. We got a Paul. My name is Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, my name is still Paul. Okay. Now, we are going over today. Now, this is gonna be a little bit different. So usually my documentary reviews, like I take my phone, I make notes, I do this. Y'all, this one, I ended up going way beyond that, okay? So this is gonna be, for the Sofa Squad, a very deep dive. What we will do is kind of keeping it traditional with how I do docu-series reviews. I held my phone, I made notes as I went, and we're gonna talk about those. They're in a bullet point format. I got my little notes in front of me. And we'll use this as a starting point, but then we're gonna go deeper into what Amy's brother is saying, what Yellow's doing now, the pictures, all the little things. And now keep in mind also, I am not an expert in this case. This is not exhaustive. Literally more and more and more keeps coming up every single day. So I'm basically just presenting to you the things that stuck out to me the most about the docuseries, as well as my research into it after. So with that being said, let's talk very quickly about what the case is in case you're not familiar with it and whatnot. So 1998, Amy Bradley, 23 years old at that time, she boards a Caribbean cruise with her parents and brother. Now this is supposed to be like a family getaway, which we're going to talk about that as we go, okay? Instead, it becomes literally one of the most haunting missing person cases in modern history, right? I didn't know about it until this came out, and I'm shocked I hadn't heard about it, to be honest. So what happened? So early one morning, Amy vanishes from the ship without a trace, okay? No witnesses, no yells for help, no nothing. Well, let me take the witnesses part out. There have been some witnesses, but no one can, absolutely say, I saw blank happen to her. So we'll get more into that in a little bit. But there was an open balcony door. There's a bunch of theories on the internet, okay? And that's basically where we're at, open balcony door, table against the side, dad saw this, whatever. We're gonna get into all of it, okay? And then there's the new Netflix documentary, okay? So it revisits that evening and the search, the family members, the alleged sightings, all the things, okay? So we're gonna break all this down. So that's the basics of that. As of this recording, which is August 9th, 2025, she has not been found, okay? Like in the way of like, hands down, we have Amy, she's coming home, right? So there's that. Now also keep in mind before we go, one thing I want people to really keep in mind here, because this is one thing I really saw in the comment sections, and this is my experience with Netflix. Netflix produces shows to get you talking, to grab your attention. Most true crime docuseries at this stage in the game, at point in time, have a bias, have a direction, have something going on that they want to lead you down. So just keep, now I'm not trying to say that Netflix's thing is false or this, or whatever, but just understand that that's how these shows are made. They are still at the end of the day packaging these things up to be entertainment and to create a sense of mystery into this and that, and and they'll leave this out, but they'll put this in and they'll do that. They create a narrative. Narrative is the word I'm looking for. So keep that in mind with this, okay? Because I literally saw so many different people in comment sections going down this thing over here saying, oh, this is absolutely fact, when it's not. So just understand that. Now also, I'll say it again, I'm gonna Christina Randall this comment section. Y'all please be kind to each other. So many theories are out there, so many different opinions. So in today's world, we need all the kindness we can get. So please just respect that people will have different opinions and theories on the case, and just be kind, rewind, okay? Let's Christina Randall it and Blockbuster video it, okay? Now let's start talking about the docuseries. And one thing I'll do, if you follow me, you'll know how I do this. I literally make notes. So if the docuseries is at this point in time right here, and then we jump to here, that's how my notes go for these, and we're just going to use them as talking points. So like I said, Amy Bradley is missing. This is the docuseries we're talking about, okay? Now it starts off, we're hearing from friends, from families, and they're all theorizing, like most of us are doing now, as to what could have happened. Now her parents talk about how much they are absolutely haunted by her memory, by what went down. I mean, it's like they have her stuff there. It's very sad. Now the mother equates the feeling to going shopping and looking up and one of your kids is missing. And when she said that, literally my stomach it fell, because I was like, I can't imagine living with that feeling for the rest of your life, right? What a horrible, horrible thing. So it then begins to, go into everything, right? And they go back to March 21st, 1988. And a friend who house sat for them while they were going, she remembers just talking about we were really close and, with Amy and the Bradleys and everybody. And so you really get the sense that Amy, people thought very highly of her. People liked her. She was friendly. She was athletic. She had a lot going for her. Now we'll also hear from Kirk, a cruise ship director or something like that. And he recalls his time working for the cruises, and Amy's cruise that evening, all that. We'll get to him and his stuff here and again in a little bit. Then we hear from the brother. Now that's Brad. We're going to be talking a lot about Brad because he is out there doing tons of interviews and different podcasts. We'll talk about a couple specifically in this video. He recalls that evening. He recalls that vacation. They're going to dinners. They're having pool parties. They're on vacation. They're trying to have a good time, right? That's how he makes it sound. Now the parents will recall saying goodnight to Amy for the very last time. So Brad and Amy that evening, they'll go to the nightclub. Brad will eventually leave, go back to the room where the parents are. They're all staying in this room, okay? Around 3:40 a.m., Amy comes back. They, meaning Brad and her, finish drinks. They talk about the next day, etc. Now Amy will mention the bass player of the band, on the cruise ship, making a pass at her. We will talk about him. His name's Alistair, but he is referred to as Yellow. So we're going to be talking about him in depth, okay? If you've watched this, you already know why. Now Brad says that they were both tipsy. Amy didn't feel good and she decides to stay on the balcony, get some fresh air, that kind of a thing. So Brad heads back in. Well, around 5:30, the dad will say that he woke up, he looks, he sees Amy's legs and feet on the balcony. She's sitting in the chair, and I guess in lounge chair, there's a little table there. So he'll say that she sees her legs. Close to 6 o'clock, something wakes the dad up again. Amy is gone, the balcony door is open, cigarettes, lighter are gone, and the shirt that she wore that night is in the room. I believe her shoes were left on the balcony as well. Now the dad assumes that she got up, went to go get coffee, that type of stuff. So he gets up and he goes and looks for her, but he can't find her. Now all this is in 30 minutes, okay? So then he wakes his wife up, Amy's mom, and they're, what's up? And then keep this in mind. During this time, the ship is close to docking at this point, okay? Now, Brent, who is a guest manager on the ship, is alerted, some guest or concern about their daughter, something like that. And then the parents are like, hey, will you please do a voice page? But they're like, look, it's super early. We don't want to essentially bother the other guest, and tells them to keep looking and come back in a half hour. Okay, so there's that, right? Now, obviously they don't find her, okay? So the ship is then getting ready to unboard, and the parents are like, could we please hold the passengers? We need to find Amy, what's going on? And, they're basically like, sorry, we can't hold up everybody's vacation, and they unboard the ship at one of their stops or whatever. So the parents are describing the nightmare of seeing everybody else going on with life, right? Now, eventually the ship will conduct a Charlie drill. It's like a deep search, but there's still hundreds of passengers, on board, this, that, and the other. To me, it also sounds very much like a self-policing type thing. So it's almost like, everybody double check your stuff. You know what I mean? But that being said, there's all this crew looking and all this type of stuff. And the captain eventually is like, your daughter's not on this ship. Okay, we can't find her. Now, this is where the Coast Guard will get involved in an open search, but there's no bodies found either. And then we hear from people on the show saying, if the body was in the water there, it's so close to shore, she would have washed up. Therefore, she didn't go overboard. Okay, now let's pause here for a second to get a few things out, because honestly, if I try to remember these at the very end, I'll forget them, okay? So, very quick take on that. I'm gonna also address questions that I've gotten. Yes, I was pretty flabbergasted maybe at the response of Kirk, the cruise ship director, basically being like, hey, everybody else is on vacation. We can't ruin everybody else's vacation. Really? Okay. I understand that this is it's a cruise ship. They're doing a business. They're doing this and that. In my opinion, had the cruise ship taken this seriously in that moment and said, no one's getting off this boat until we account for everybody and figure out what's going on, we would not be here today. If it was, hey, you know what? She ain't on this boat. Okay, so there's only one thing that could have happened, and that means she went overboard. And whatever happened then happened, right? But because of the ship doing this, and also the room was cleaned too, by the time investigators, we're gonna get to that in a second. Okay, so there's that. So yes, I did feel like hearing from the ship people, where I was like, ugh. Doing an early morning call, seriously? And I understand they're probably sitting there, they probably heard this 100 times, and they're like, yeah, your 20-something-year-old daughter, can't find her? Yeah, because she was partying all night. I'm sure they've seen it a million times, times, right? But they're living in the party has to go on, and unfortunately, it doesn't always have to go on, right? It's like some things are a little bit more important. So yes, that was a huge question I got asked a lot by an email and stuff like that. Yes, that part sent me, okay? So let's continue on. Now, this case makes prime time, right? I mean, it's blowing up then. Okay, so another woman will talk about her daughter dying on a 3-day cruise, and these things happen. They talk about how these ships are basically their own little country that's pretty lawless, and there's not much going on, and the cruise ship's best interest is what? The cruise ship. Why? Because of money. It always comes down to that. So we hear from an FBI agent in the show, and she recalls helping on the case. They get on the ship in St. Martin, I believe it was, but the room had been cleaned like I discussed before they even got to arrive. So you see how things start to fall apart. Now they'll describe this table that's pushed up to the rail, the side or whatever, with her shoes nearby. They don't know if the cleaning people moved the table, but that's where the table is, okay? Then the FBI meets with the family, and they talk with them and all this type of stuff, whatever. Okay, so then the key card situation. So the key cards to the room, you put a key card in, it comes out. So the key cards have some database that shows when somebody enters the room, but not when they exit it. So they can confirm that Amy entered the room at 3:40 a.m. or at least, somebody with her card, and you can surmise with their brother saying he was in there and a witness. So she went in there at 3:40, right? We cannot prove when she left the room. Now the ship's cameras don't show anything, but there's not like, remember this is a minute ago, right? So the cameras aren't like they would be today where it's like everywhere is on video. So they deduct that she disappeared sometime between 5:30 and 6 a.m. Now, the passengers on the ship, they got some for the docuseries, and they'll recall the rumor mill. You can only imagine of somebody's missing, this happened, that happened. I mean, it's crazy, okay? Now, the next door passenger, like the dude next door, says that he talked to Amy. Now, the parents say he was weird. There's a weird vibe with it. Another passenger says that after Amy disappeared, that dude's TV was loud and he was talking in the room, but he checked out apparently and passed, all the whatever the police want to do, okay? Then a videographer starts reviewing the nightclub footage, and they see Amy dancing with a bass player. Who is the bass player, might you ask? A gentleman nicknamed Yellow. Okay, this is where we'll get into this some. And we'll get into it more even deeper here in a minute. Now, next day, cruise ship requests master tapes. The videographer basically refused to give those over, but they give the FBI a copy. And I can understand why, because remember, what is the cruise ship's number one priority? Their bottom dollar, money, right? That's what they're after. So they have to cover stuff up, do this and that. Certainly if there's a question, if it was one of their members, okay? Now, another witness situation. A woman who was on the top deck between 5 and 6 a.m. sees Amy and a crew member in a glass elevator. They're going up to the nightclub. 10 to 15 minutes later, he walks past her alone, and she's like, yeah, my thought was like, where's that? She didn't know Amy at the time, but where's that, girl at? Where's that woman? So it's interesting that she remembers this. Now, they question him, right? They polygraph him. He admits to flirting, but he denies any kind of involvement, obviously, in what's going on. The polygraph came back inconclusive. Now, the mother will recall in the docuseries flying home from St. Thomas and feeling absolutely horrible. Now, the parents will return home and immediately set up a command center, okay? They begin reaching out to everyone. Now, the first episode ends with the man saying that he saw her 4 months later on a cruise at Port Marie, I believe it was. Then we get into episode 2. So it begins with that guy's story. He's scuba diving and these 3 people walk up to him on the beach. One of them is a woman. She comes up. She has a Tasmanian devil tattoo that will play very big, and that's because that's what Amy had. And one of the men basically comes up and stares him down and shuffles her away, okay? And so there's that, right? Now, the family will eventually return to Caraco to search. They hold press conference, the whole 9 yards, right? So after the press conference, a taxi driver tells them that Amy is on the island, okay? She didn't go overboard, none of that. And he's like, she asked once to use my phone, okay? And he's describing the situation, and he tells them where to go look. Now, the local cops will be like, look, we're gonna take you because these are mafia controlled areas. You don't want to be going up in here. Well, obviously they don't find her, okay? Now, the family will eventually contact America's Most Wanted. This is a huge show back in my day. Now, then we'll have have an eyewitness who sees her on America's Most Wanted, recognizes the tattoos, recognizes the piercing. It says that she was with two men, one that was identified as the cruise ship band leader. Now, friends would say that Amy would fight if somebody tried to take her. They're like, she was not going to be the one, right? She was athletic, she was strong. Now, also we get into this part right here on that note. Now, the friends will recall Amy coming out as gay in college, and her ex-girlfriend will get on there too and recalls the parents like, we're not happy, you know, at first, but still loving, etc., etc. Okay, now let's pause right there because this is another thing that I've heard a lot and seen a lot of comment sections about. We'll get more into it deeper. One of the things that I see and that will come back up is, you know, with the whole thing about her coming out and that being a source of contention with the family. And we'll talk more about the ex-girlfriends or the past girlfriends, whatever we're going to talk about that. But a lot of stuff that I see in comment sections and theories is that because of the situation with her coming out and it being tumultuous, Amy chose to go overboard, like on her own. You see what I'm trying to say, right? So I've obviously, I'm not there. I don't know. Could that have happened? Possibly, you know, I don't know, right? But it's enough. I see enough stuff on TikTok and comment sections and theories and blah, 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 blah. Is there 100% proof of that? No, right? It's just a theory at this point. At the end of the day, until Amy comes home, none of us will ever know what happened to her. And obviously, if it's as simple as what is that, Occam's razor of the simplest thing or whatever, she went overboard, then obviously she's not coming back home, right? But one thing that I saw very prevalent is that people talking about, look, who follow the case for a long time, like it's never been said publicly until now with this docuseries that she was, you know, a lesbian. So they use this as like a site of like, hey, look, there's this tumultuous family, and there might be, right? As far as that goes, you know, I don't know. That was their thing, you know, whatever took place, again, we'll never know, right? But it's enough of a prevalent theory that we'll talk about it again when we get to it in a minute. But I just want to bring that up because me watching it and not having followed this like years and years, for me, when she came out as lesbian, I was kind of like, you know, some of the things were there, I was like, thinking, but I was like, I'm not going to judge a book, you know, whatever. And then when the stuff started coming out, like, okay, well, yeah, she came out and blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, got it, right? Now, I didn't read into it in the way of like her letters to her girlfriend, the message in the bottle and things of this nature, as a preemptive, I'm gonna take my own life type situation. But again, I don't know Amy, right? I don't know her, so I can't say. But I didn't read into it in that way. Now, once I found out that like the whole coming out thing, or like, you know, that not being discussed and whatnot, again, I was like, oh, okay, like I thought that was just like a known thing in this case, but apparently it wasn't. So, you know, there's that. But we'll get to that more in a minute. But again, just know, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, you know, she's like me. I was like, oh, okay, she's, you know, she's gay. Okay, got it. There's that. But it adds another layer in with maybe the pressures that she was feeling and some of the things that Yellow will say that she said to him. So we'll get more into that, but just, you know, put that over here right now. So the investigators will consider this option, right? Does she unalive herself? But her friends and family are like, she was making plans she wanted to live. And that's kind of how I saw it too. You know, for me, I was just like, she seemed to be making all these plans and doing stuff and whatnot and blah, 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 blah. But again, that doesn't mean that something couldn't have happened and a discussion taken place and alcohol involved. You know, but the little bit I've learned of Amy and this, she doesn't strike me as the type that would go, she seems like a real tough fighter, right? Where she might be hurt because of maybe I wasn't supported by my family, but not to the extent of I'm going to take my life over it, right? Like I almost read into it where I was like, oh, when she gets off this cruise, honey, she's gone. Okay, she's going to hook up with her girlfriend and gonna go do her own little thing. To me, that's what she struck me as. It's like, hey, y'all got a problem with me? Well, guess what? I'm doing this over here. You know, this is my thing right here. But again, I don't know her. So let's keep going. To Bill, another eyewitness. Okay, 10 months later in Krakow. He's at like the seedy hotel bar, whatever, and he sees this woman. And she's like, hey, look, can you help me? I'm being held against my will. You know, I owe these dudes $200 and they basically won't let me go because of it. He says that her name's Amy and that she left the ship to get drugs. Like this is what this person said. So Okay, now years later, so nothing comes of it then, right? So Bill connects the dots later and believes the story. FBI polygraphs him, says he's truthful. Now the family will also discuss how much the cruise staff paid attention to Amy. So some photos of her go missing, like you know how they'll do like photos and stuff like that. Some of those go missing. They tried to invite her to get off of the boat, etc., etc. We'll talk more about this when it comes to the trafficking dynamic of it, because again, I don't know how that works, right? I heard some people say like, oh, why are the parents and why are the family being so big on like saying that men are attracted to her, men this and men this, almost like playing into that they were uncomfortable with her sexuality. So this is another chance to say men desired her and whatnot. Again, I don't know what went on behind closed doors with family conversations and that type stuff. So I don't know, right? Could that be? Sure, possibly, right? But to me, I interpreted it as being like, no, the staff is like paying extra, like why are they so into her? You know what I mean? Like, and again, I've never been on a cruise. I'm reading into it in the context of even for a cruise ship, because obviously people want tips, right? They want to get money, they want to get paid. So they're going to be nice, they're going to be flirtatious, they're going to be this and that and the other. This to me, the way the parents described it, the parents' family, it was like over the top of that to like a uncomfortable level, right? So, but again, I wasn't there. I've not been on a cruise. I don't have something to compare that to. Do I think trying to invite her, if it was legitimate, they try to get her off the boat? That's completely bizarre to me. Why on earth would someone try and do that? This was also many decades ago. In this day and age, you could probably catch charges just for that. Back then, that might not have been a thing, right? So let's keep going. Now, the parents will talk about the extensive search, all the leads that went on, and then they will talk about the photo from the escort website that resembles Amy. They're gonna analyze it. Yep, we believe this is her because of the measurement here and the this, that, the other, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's stop and talk about the picture for a moment. And just so we're clear, I go back and forth on what I think happened to Amy. This is one of those where it's like Jean Bonnet, right? Depending on what time of the day it is you ask me, I go back and forth. When I saw the pictures, where's my thing? Case closed. Case closed. Case closed. Okay. I was like, that's her. That's her. Go on, swing the gavel. Then I saw other people who were like, well, wait a minute. This is actually, and the woman, her name's Jazz, right? Whether that's Amy or whatever, but that's what she goes by. That's what the pictures are being called. So people start making comparisons to this and the other. And they were like, well, here's all these other pictures. This woman doesn't have the tattoos. Why hasn't said person in this photo come forward and said, hey, that's me? You know, so on and so forth. To me, it looks just like her. Okay, it looks just like her. This is the one piece of evidence to me that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Amy. Now, I saw someone else do a thing where they were like, one of them has what they call a connected earlobe and the other one doesn't. Okay, now that made me say, this might be a thing. But now even looking at them, I personally don't see the connect, like the earlobe even looks the same to me. Now again, in the docuseries, it's just like, we couldn't rule out that it's her, not her, and and so on and so forth. Does it look like Amy? Yes. Do some of the things, like to me, the teeth, the eyes, obviously, the FBI doing measurements and this and that and It looks to me like Amy, either the grown out hair or a wig or something. The person who is in the escort photos looks worried, looks in trouble, looks like they're not happy to be where they're at, which is what I would expect of Amy. Okay. So I with the pictures, but then I'm also like this. It could have been Photoshop. And especially now where people are doing comparisons, I mean, you can do anything to a picture now, right? So I would be more interested in what was it like back then for it to come out, but Photoshop was new, this, that, and the other. Doesn't matter, period, end of story. People can do stuff. I saw another creator who, and this is like TikTok, basically said that they saw on the shoulder where it looked like Amy's tattoo had been photoshopped out of the Jazz photos. Okay, so that very well could be Amy, right? I don't know. The pictures were a big selling feature to me. I'm very curious what you thought of them. When I do the things and look side by side, I mean, to me, I'm like, it's Amy, but I also am like, but so many people, it can look like it, but Amy has such unique identifying characteristics on her face that this person seems to as well. But again, this is a minute ago, right? So this is not like from yesterday. So obviously Amy would look even more different than now. But the pictures for me are inconclusive because my hesitation is people do crazy stuff. People reach out for clout and do all this even before, social media was what it is today to try and get attention. So did somebody send these pictures to her family trying to victimize them? And we'll talk more about her family being victimized by people in a minute. I don't know, right? So I don't want to 100% like, 100% that's Amy, but it very much looks like her. Okay, so let's just keep going for now. We'll revisit that later. There's another eyewitness that sees Amy's parents on Dr. Phil and recalls seeing Amy in Barbados and says that Amy was crying in a bathroom, told this woman her name. She has this bizarre encounter with Amy and these two men. Like, she was in the bathroom, the woman. Amy comes in with these two men and they're just like, you're going to be ready at 11. The deal's at 11 or whatever. You better be ready. And she's like, can we see the kids? And then this woman comes out. She's like, are you okay? And Amy, if it was her, acted just very weird at the sink, didn't want to talk, whatever. And when the woman opens the door, the men are standing there. It was this very odd situation. Now, I will say this, and let's just talk about eyewitness testimony here for a minute. It is incredibly unreliable, especially when years have gone on, especially when people want to be helpful. Sometimes it's not even intentional. People just want to help. One thing that I saw people talking about the eyewitnesses, and specifically this woman's eyewitness account, was how many details this woman remembered. Now, that didn't strike me at first, but I was like, yeah. It's hard to tell in this day and age. I'm not saying specifically this woman did this, but just in general, when you get eyewitnesses, it's like this person might want to help so bad that they are false remembering. This person might be just wanting attention and to align themselves with the case, right? Like, you never know. Now, let's pretend for a second that we could get confirmation that that was Amy, okay? Period, end of story. There's proof. She saw Amy. Here's the thing that I was like, that it was an interesting nugget for this lady to say. When she said the thing about that Amy said, can we stop and see the children? Something of that flavor. I was like, oh my gosh. And there's two things that went on here with that in my mind. If it was Amy, either she ended up having a child at some point and they're using the child to keep her there, or did, because now the kid would be older, right? Again, some of this is talking about back then. And I'll give you my thought processes on what I think could have come of Amy if she's in a trafficking situation. So we're kind of talking about past tense here, like when this took place. So at that point in time, they could have been holding her own kids hostage. Or this could be a scenario where Amy's talking about other kids that have been abducted and are in some ring. And whatever Amy's going to go do, she wants to be like, oh, we can see the kids. It's like a glimmer of hope. And she can make sure they're still alive. Like, she's checking in on them. She's giving, whatever the case is, right? But that was my first inclination, is whatever the situation is with the kids, if this truly was Amy and she truly said that, this is a way that they are keeping her quiet. Because one thing I see people talking about, and we'll get more into this when we talk about the IP addresses that are showing up, looking at the family's website that they put out about Amy. I don't for one second sit here and say at this point, well, why hasn't Amy reached out or whatever? To me, if she was in a trafficking situation, they would have made sure through fear and violence and scare tactics that she not reach out. And there's no telling what she had been made to do in life. And there's probably a lot of shame and embarrassment that comes with that. And I'm not saying that's her fault or anything, but I'm just saying, like, these people will get inside a victim's mind. And then you're sitting here like, I'm so tainted. If I go home, this will all come out. All this will be unraveled. And also, they're going to do fill in the blank to so-and-so, whether it's my family that I was taken from, or my kid that I ended up having, or these little kids, they need to see me. They're going to be scared. When I see them, it's their glimmer of hope. You see where I'm going? So I've never once thought, why didn't she reach out? Maybe, and again, if these things are like legitimate, she did try a couple of times, but it probably only makes it worse for her. And then at a certain point, you're just going to give up and go along with it. It's your life, right? You're stuck, you're doing this, you're doing that. They very well could have made her go out and help do other stuff and then threaten her with, well, if we go down, you go down. You're getting in trouble too. You did A, B, and C. You want to go to a third world country prison? Because that's where you're headed. See what I'm saying? But again, I'm talking like when this was before, okay? Again, we'll get into my thought processes and what could have come and whatnot at this point in time, but let's keep going. So we see another part in this where the daughter of Yellow, the band guy, the bass player, reaches out, okay? And then ends the episode, and then the next one starts. So she's the daughter of Alistair Douglas. She contacts Amy's family, and she recalls growing up with her dad. He was always away on cruise ships, this, that, and the other. And she says, like, at some point, like later in life, my mom tells me that something happened to dad on a cruise ship. This went down, whatever. whatever. So she says that one night when he came home, like everything changed basically. She found this like bag of photos of various women that was weird to her. And that was just like, what's up with that? Now, when she asks about Amy, she says he gets angry. And she calls him on the phone. We hear him talking. And he denies this. He's like, look, I left her at the club at 1 a.m. If I was her parents, I too would want to find her, but I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Now we go back to the cruise ship people, remember, who couldn't be bothered with helping out to find Amy, where they were basically like, she jumped overboard, jumped or fell. She went in the water, okay? Then we hear from another former girlfriend who has a message in a bottle, a little bottle with a letter in it. And at first she's like, I'm really reluctant to read this because this is very private. But, she describes how they dated and, met and all this type of stuff, right? Then it flashes over to 2018. This is the 20th anniversary of the disappearance. And talking about like, we're going to revive this or not revive it. And it's not like they gave up on it, but just, let's get it going or whatever. So there's Anthony, who's an online investigator, and he looks into the case via the website, okay? Now he partners with an eyewitness to track IP addresses, visiting the site, so on and so forth. So there's all these hits that are coming from Barbados. The family photos on the site draw a lot more views, especially on holidays, birthdays, etc. Now, speculation, they speculate why she hasn't reached out, which I touched on some of those, okay? Then that bathroom witness who I talked to about earlier, they go back to her. And she says that Amy asked the men, this is, remember, where she could see the children and whatnot. Okay, so let's pause there again for a second. Now, on the speculation, on the whole IP address thing, right? To me, this is my first inclination. I was like, well, of course, there's tons of hits coming from that area. I mean, that's where it took place, right? There's probably something constantly going on there. The whole thing about like, we get all these specific hits from this one IP address, they stay on it for this long and blah, 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 blah. That did not strike me as that's Amy. And I don't know why. I mean, yeah, could it be? Sure, absolutely. And I guess because in my world, I'm just like, well, I'm imagining this gets a lot of publicity on those special holidays around there, right? It's birthdays, whatever. So people are going and looking at it, and then you never know. And there's people like us who are into these cases and crimes who are visiting this stuff and might go on those special days and look at it. Could it be Amy going and reminiscing and thinking of what a life that could have been that was hers? Absolutely, right? But it didn't strike me as odd. It didn't strike me as like the smoking gun in the scenario, whatever. Okay, so that's the docuseries in a nutshell, walking through it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue talking about these key points and whatnot, but we're going to go a little bit deeper, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a few of the past things that took place in it to bring us up to speed on some of the current things that are going on. Okay, now before we get any deeper into this, let's take a moment and let's start talking about Yellow, aka Alistair. Alistair Yellow Douglas. Okay, so he was the bass player we've been talking about in the band aboard the Rhapsody, okay? Obviously he was there when Amy went missing, the whole 9 yards, right? This is who we've been discussing. Now, witnesses reported seeing him with Amy late on the night before she disappeared, making him literally one of the last known people to interact with her and be seen with her. So Douglas has said that their exchange was brief. It was a conversation about music, some dancing, a comment about her smoking due to stress. We'll talk more about that. Before he returned to his cabin, before their crew curfew. Now, he was questioned by the FBI. He took polygraph tests. He was later told he was cleared, but his name has literally remained synonymous with this case. Now, one thing I want to talk about real quick is what he's up to now. Now, this article I'm going to reference, it's by Grazia UK, it's by Alice Hall, and it kind of gives us like a very up-to-date, like what he's up to or whatever, right? So Yellow has seemingly disappeared, but not in like a missing persons way like Amy, but in a new life, new me kind of a thing, okay? So in 2024, he stepped briefly into the spotlight, and he gave a very rare interview to a place called the True Crime This Week. The guy hosting it, James, I believe his name is, found him living in Grenada. Okay, he presides over this tiny little congregation of about 40 to 50 worshipers in a shack perched up on the mountainside. So he's now a reverend, and also he practices like exorcisms and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, so we got cruise ship bases to mountaintop minister. Okay, big plot twist. Now let's talk about that interview that he did. Okay, so this is with James Renner. Yellow sits down for an interview with this guy, right? And keep in mind, and James will reference this in the interview, like this is the first time in like almost 2 decades that Yellow Douglas, whatever you want to call him, has spoken publicly about the case. He's kept a very low profile. He goes over the whole thing about, him living in Grenada, the small church and whatnot. Now, James will bring up, he's like, okay, yeah, you've been a person of interest by the public, like what's up with that? We have all these witnesses that talk about like like we've already discussed. They saw him with Amy late that night before she vanished and the whole 9 yards. Okay, now Renner will talk about the fact that Douglas makes this claim that Amy told him that she was forced to go on the cruise. And this was basically because, the family found out she was gay, and it was this whole situation, okay? Now, Douglas will recount his version of events. He'll say that what he believes was a Monday night, the ship was sailing from Aruba, and it hosted an event called Dancing Under the Stars. Now, his band finishes playing around, like, say, midnight, and as they're packing up to go, Amy came over to compliment him, about the set or whatever, and she told him that she too, like, plays the saxophone or whatever. And so they made brief small talk. Now, Douglas said that he planned to head to the Viking Lounge afterward, which entertainers had to leave by like 1 a.m. I believe. Now, after showering, changing, etc., he encounters Amy again on the deck, and she's smoking very heavily. And he's like, this isn't something I'm used to seeing in Granada. Like, what's up? Why are you smoking? What's wrong? And she allegedly told him that her father had discovered that she was gay and had forced her to come on the cruise. So Yellow/Douglas says that they danced briefly before Douglas left to return to his room before the curfew for the crew. Now, he says that was the last time he saw her, like, period, end of story. So then he says the next morning around 7 a.m., Douglas, the ship's hotel manager, calls and he's like, hey, do you have a woman in your room? And, he's like, no. Now, remember, this is like major forbidden for the crew, okay? So the manager tells him that the woman that he had been seen talking to the night before is now missing, right? And so they're just like, you're the last person seen with her. So the ship goes on lockdown, and this is when the investigation begins. And Douglas says that his room, the key card data proved that he returned to his room around 1 a.m. and stayed there, and he shared the space with another band member. I believe their name's Oscar. Now, he recalls the whole, being questioned extensively, taking multiple polygraph tests, being interviewed by Granada, by FBI agent, the whole 9 yards, okay? Now, eventually, the FBI agent, Sherry, I believe is her name, says, he's cleared, okay? However, you can already imagine, like, his reputation was shot. He lost contracts. He stopped at airports, online harassment. It extends to his mother. I'm sorry, his wife, his daughter. Now, if you recall on the phone call that we saw on Netflix, if you watched it, basically he just hangs up, right? The phone just goes, okay? So let's talk about him very quickly in this interview and him and whatnot. So, because this is another major thing. Do I think he had something to do with the case? I go back and forth. When I watched the Netflix thing, again, where is it? You already know. Go on. Case closed on that, okay? Sold, whatever. Okay, number one, the thing about, the gay situation and all that. Let's go down these couple of little rabbit holes here. Let's say he did have something to do with it and he's trying to hide it. How much time has passed? He could have easily found that information out and curtailed his, and curated his story to match that. Okay, because that could have been something. Let's pretend he did not have anything to do with it, because if you've been cleared by the FBI and he passed this and he passed that and he then, okay. So do we take face value that Amy's like, yeah, I got outed and, this is a really stressful cruise, this, that, and the other, right? Who knows? Do I think it's weird that he was dancing with her? No. I think that that's probably something that kind of happens, right? The crew members might dance with people, this, that, and the other, whatever. I don't know at this point what to make of his story. Do I feel like I believe him? Not 100%. Do I feel like I disbelieve him? Not 100%. The fact that he's a reverend now, like, my first thing was like, oh, he's seen so many horrible things. He's like, wants to turn to God or whatever the case may be. I don't know what to think of him. And again, if you're going down the pathway of trafficking and people on the cruise and this whole thing being here where import the cruise ships work, they've singled her out, they're taking photos, they're doing this, they're doing that, there's that. Now we go back to the eyewitness testimony with those women where, like, we saw them walking and then he was taking her up here and then he doesn't come back, or she doesn't come back. That part's weird to me. I also don't trust eyewitness testimony, right? It's something that nobody will ever know. The daughter saying that there was a suitcase with a bunch of women's pictures in it, yeah, that's odd. Could he just be a perv who was taking them women's pictures? 100%, right? It could be a scenario where multiple things are true at once. Like, because the pictures that were missing, almost like those, like, imagine when you go to Disney or a theme park and they take your picture and you can go get it, and buy it. It was like those, but ones of Amy were gone. Maybe someone took a liking to her. I don't know. Maybe he took a liking to her. Maybe he took a liking to a bunch of people's pictures, women, and he stole their pictures and being pervy. Does that make him a killer? No. Does it make him kind of weird? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, but the way the Netflix thing presents it, it's like, oh yeah, this man's guilty. But then when you start going down the other pathways of, like, could this happen? Could that happen? Could this or that? Whatever. And again, we'll get more into my thought processes on what if she went overboard versus trafficking. But for now, let's get into some more of the interviews and whatnot. Now, as I said before, obviously her family hasn't given up looking or anything like that. With all this new attention, her brother has been very active on social media, doing podcasts, interviews, you name it. Now, what I want to do, because there's literally so many to pick from, I picked a couple of them. Okay, I think one is like the Young Jerks and another one, Nate Eaton, of course. And I want to just talk about what the brother discusses on those, use those as talking points to give a gist of like what the story out there is being done. Okay, so obviously on these podcasts, he is going to sit here and do the backstory, you know, of like, how do we arrive here, kind of like I do or whatever. Establish, you know, he's the brother, you know, all the things, okay? Now, one thing he does make sure to mention is the family's overwhelming outpouring of support that the family has gotten and the attention since this Netflix documentary came out, right? I mean, as you already know, right? Everyone's talking about this. And he says that, yeah, the family does still endure a significant amount of hate and judgment online as well, but they've gotten, you know, thick skin over the years and they've learned to deal with this. Now, he says that, you know, maintaining hope is the most important for the family. And he does acknowledge the odds are slim, but not zero. And a core motivation that he'll talk about in wanting to do these interviews, these podcasts, is obviously keeping Amy's story alive to get answers and maybe help from others by spotlighting cruise ship safety, what happened with them, human trafficking, all the things, right? Now, he will go over his criticisms of the cruise line's response. I talked about my own opinion of those as well. And he'll talk about criticisms of the staff, especially the cruise director, for lack of empathy and urgency. And I agree completely on that. Now, he'll say that, you know, the cruise lines prioritize business and customer experience over immediately trying to help them look for Amy. Totally agree. And it did not end well. Now, he'll say, you know, like we already talked about, the ship didn't stop, it didn't lock down. They just business as usual, and this messed the investigation up. Now, he'll also talk about, you know, all the stuff surrounding Yellow, Douglas, Alistair, Mr. Man, who we've been talking about. And he'll say that, you know, he was like very suspicious acting, that he approached Brad in the early morning hours of Amy's disappearance, and he like already knew that she was missing. So it's like, well, how did he know that? Now, he'll say that there was also contradictory statements with Alistair's key card. Basically, he's like, you know, cast doubt on his honesty, okay? And that he says, you know, the timeline just doesn't match up with his key card, so it's Now he'll talk about Yellow's daughter and how she came forward and said that he lied and acted, you know, suspicious after returning from the cruise. Now, Brad wants Yellow to retake a polygraph for the FBI and for the FBI to investigate him. Now, the FBI and the investigation issues, as far as all that go, Brad has dissatisfaction with their investigation, period, end of story, okay? He says that they disregarded eyewitness accounts from the two young women who saw Amy and Yellow together the morning that she disappeared. He said that also the family feels like the FBI hasn't adequately followed up on leads or like employed modern technology to help in the investigation. And he'll talk about petitions and whatnot, including one for an Amy alert. It's basically a system that's very similar to the Amber Alert for cruise ships. Honestly, I was like, they don't have that already? I mean, that's scary, right? Now, he'll also talk about human trafficking, sighting theories, and these pictures of whoever this is in there being on these escort websites, we'll call it. Now, he'll also mention how yes, there is some forensic analysis that does support that, hey, this could be Amy in those pictures, but nothing is conclusive. He'll also talk about the whole situation with that military member who said that he interacted with Amy years before at a hotel, but basically because of the situation, like he couldn't come forward and say that because it would have gotten him in trouble. Now, they'll talk about the money, the financial impact, you know, their GoFundMe, having to take out second mortgages just to cover investigators, like the massive amount of money that goes behind a missing person's case like this. Now, he'll also say that, you know what, losing Amy was a major thing for him as to why he made some life choices and also why he never had children. Now, as far as online rumors goes, he will say, you know what, our family, we strongly, the whole thing that Amy unalived herself or jumped overboard, we're not on with that. We do not believe that. He says that Amy was happy, athletic, excited for the future. She wasn't struggling with her sexuality, that the family was supportive, and that her drinking and whatnot was moderate, and that basically was not likely to cause an accidental drowning. Now, he'll also talk about the Scientology angle, okay? This is one of the main things from these interviews. So he'll talk about how Amy was talking to these kind of two mysterious women, and they had these like very specific like uniforms on or whatever that could be identified with, you know, that. And I'll say that after Amy vanished, that the family was visited in Caraco by members of the Sea Org from the Scientology vessel free winds, offering grief counseling, and asking specific questions about Amy, and like doing these things like, I don't know, they were like doing this like touch thing and all this, and the dad was finally like, y'all got to go. Like, it was weird. And he's like, well, how did they even get on the boat, right? Like, it was this very weird thing. Now, Brad had said he's like for decades tried to get the media, the FBI, to investigate possible Scientology and human trafficking connections there, okay? Now, he'll also talk about the connections between Amy's case and Natalie Holloway's disappearance. And he'll express these concerns about, the criminal elements of human trafficking in that region. He'll also talk about rumors of Amy being held like against her with a wealthy family, but there's nothing substantial ever confirmed with that. Now, he'll also talk about those IP addresses that are hitting on those special birthdays and things of that nature. And he'll speculate, there could be a possible connection if Amy's alive, or those people involved or whatever, that could definitely, it could be a thing. Now, in Nate Eaton's interview, Brad will echo a lot of these same things, and he'll recall this trip, and he'll say, we boarded in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and spent the first days at sea before arriving in Aruba. And that after a day on the island, they returned to the ship for a pool party, and this goes late into the night. Well, when the party wraps up, many passengers, including Amy and Brad, go to the Viking Lounge nightclub. And this is where, he'll talk about that video that shows Amy dancing with Yellow, the bass player. He'll recount the evening and all of this. Now, Brad will go into, the whole thing about, Yellow is considered a prime suspect by the family. He'll talk about leaving and returning to the cabin a few minutes before Amy does, and that she later joins him on the balcony. She tells him that she felt unwell. She planned to sleep outside, and that was the last time he spoke to her. He'll go into the whole thing about, 5:30, the dad sees Amy's legs stretched out on the balcony chair, but didn't wake her. And then when the dad again, looks at 6 a.m., the balcony door was open. Amy is gone. Now, Brad will go a little deeper into here, and he'll say that the key card data, never fully disclosed by the FBI, shows that both he and Yellow entered their respective cabins at exactly 3:35 a.m., with Amy returning 5 minutes later. Now, he'll say the whole thing about how Yellow later claims that he had been in the room since 1 a.m., but Brad says the data contradicts that. Now, even weirder than that, he goes into the whole thing where between 7:30 and 8 a.m., before any public announcement was made, Yellow approaches Brad on the pool deck to say he was sorry about Amy. Now, Brad says that two women, Crystal and Lori, told the family that they saw Amy taking that glass elevator, remember the two ladies we talked about, toward the club between 5:30 and 6. Now, a third witness, Elizabeth, he'll talk about, that she testified years later that she saw Amy and Yellow together in the lounge that morning. Now, she'll claim that she saw Yellow hand Amy a dark drink before the pair goes to the back area. After they move back there, she claims that a young girl comes out yelling, "Senorita kidnap, Senorita kidnap." Now, according to Brad, he says the FBI never interviewed the mother, who could have confirmed Crystal and Lori's timeline. Now, remember how I talked about the photos and all that type of stuff? Well, he goes into that more here as well. And he talks about the formal photos. Okay, they're missing. This is from the ship's gallery, and they had to be reprinted because the originals were gone, and this is very weird to them. He also talks about that whole interaction with that cab driver who said that Amy approached his cab asking for a phone and then walks away. And he'll go into how the same cab driver suggested that, I don't think she jumped, I don't think she fell over. There's these 3 places to go look at and whatnot. Now, he'll also talk about how Amy was fearful of, heights. Apparently she didn't like the sea and all this type of stuff, which this plays also into people's thing about why would the family make her come on this trip if she didn't want to be there type situation. I've heard that from a lot of things, but apparently she didn't feel good looking over the rail, whatever. That was a thing. Okay. So this also obviously can add into why she probably wouldn't jump. Now, he'll talk about how at the time that she disappeared, if that is all how it went down, that, the boat's stationary, it's in port, people are getting ready for morning activities, that this isn't like a really good time for some kind of overboard incident to go unnoticed. Now, Brad will say his belief is that Amy was smuggled off of the ship. She was taken into crew areas and smuggled off of the ship in Caraco. He'll also say the ship's report later revealed that crew members were told to search their own quarters. Okay. Now, obviously we talked about this before. I mean, when you're asking people to check up behind themselves, especially with something like this, as Brad said, why bother? Now, he'll also also say that the FBI hasn't really done much in the recent years, and that jurisdictional issues prevent them from interviewing Yellow without his consent, right? Because I mean, you can't, and I think the FBI agent even said on the show, you can't just go into another country, like it has to be a thing. Now he'll again talk about those pictures of Amy/Jazz, and the FBI told them that yeah, there's a high probability the woman was Amy, though it's not confirmed. He'll talk about those suspicious, IP spikes on the family's website, and he'll obviously, continue to ask for the public's support and help in finding his sister. And now Brad echoes this in many of the interviews and podcasts that he's been doing, and this is part of the game, right? Keeping the story alive, keeping this going and whatnot. And another thing that I see with Brad is that he's very active. Like he's on TikTok, people tag him in things for him to check out and look, and he'll come in and comment and do this and do that. He's very active on this. So, I think that's pretty cool to be out there still doing that. And again, with whatever took place, the only way to keep it going is to keep it public and to hold people accountable, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the cruise ship, the whatever, asking questions, putting the name out there, trying to hold people accountable to get answers can obviously be a very difficult thing, especially when so much time has passed. Now, like we've discussed, the cruise ships have a vested interest. They don't, especially something like this, they don't want that coming out. If something happened on their cruise ships where a member did something, whether it's trafficking, murder, whatever, even somebody falling off, like this is not good publicity, right? Now, what I want to do though is let's get the tea right from the source. Okay, we're gonna go back to true crime this week. The guy James, who we looked at one of his interviews earlier, we're going to go back to another interview that he did, and this time it was with a Royal Caribbean staff member, and they shed light on like the drug trade in Curaçao, how things were on cruise ships at this time. Now, the interviewee has worked in the cruise ship industry since like 1999 or something, including Royal Caribbean in the Caribbean region around the time of Amy's disappearance. Now, basically, so the host, he checks his credentials out, okay, make sure he's who he is, but he remains anonymous for safety reasons. I mean, obviously. So on the cruise ship drug smuggling situation, drug trafficking, especially cocaine. Remember, we're talking about various times here. This was very common, he says, back in like the late 1990s. He says that Curaçao was a hot spot, that a kilo of cocaine could be bought for $600 there and sold in Miami, San Juan for like 25 to 30K. So you do the math on that, right? He said that port police and customs sometimes approached crew to participate, and guests could also be involved. Now, he said that guests often connected through bartenders, ship pharmacies who provided drugs on board or arranged pickups at ports like Curaçao. Now, they would talk about some of the different methods with this, and some of those included tricking the guest into carrying medication packages back to the ship, or paying them to knowingly smuggle drugs from like different designated drop points. Now, on the whole subject of recruitment and grooming of guests, he said that crew members sometimes groom guests from day one to assist in the smuggling. He says Aruba was key because the ship stayed overnight and it gave the crew a chance to take guests to semi-controlled environments like Carlos and Charlie's. He said that one of the tricks was like to make the guests feel like they were part of the crew's inner circle. Now, he would also talk about corruption and collusion. And he said that successful smuggling operations often required the involvement and or the awareness from customs, harbor police, even sometimes the ship's own security. Now, he said that nothing major had happened in certain ports without the authorities knowing it, period. He also said that bribery was very common to ensure like a smooth port clearance, avoid delays, prevent the full ship searches, the whole 9 yards. He said the payment could often be money, alcohol, cigarettes, or even free cruises. Now, he also talked about a specific smuggling incident where a female crew member was sent to pick up drugs in Curaçao, disappears for like 3 to 4 weeks, and then was reportedly held for ransom. She then suddenly returned and then left without her luggage. Now, the official story, he says, was it was claimed as medical treatment or something, but she was never formally signed off the ship. So the possibility that she was involved or unknowingly used for a drug pickup is seen as 100% plausible by this dude. Now, he also said if she tried to back out or told the wrong people, say corrupt customs people, she could have been held for ransom or even killed. Now, he also names Campo Alegre and Curaçao as it's some kind of like major criminal hotspot, and he says that this could be a possible location where she could have been taken. Now he says authorities could have known that she didn't go overboard, which is why the search began so late. Now they also talk about the whole Scientology ship theory thing or whatever. And remember, so Amy's brother thought that she was talking to these like Scientologists or whatever from Aruba and whatnot. So this dude, the interviewee, he believes that they were actually Aruban customs officers sailing with the ship to Caraco. Now he says that if Amy spoke to them for like an hour, that she might have been discussing an offer or seeking help, possibly from the wrong people. Now as far as like what this dude thinks about the band member Yellow, he says that the video shows him dancing with Amy after his allowed hours. That should have gotten him fired unless he was protected. He says that security and bar staff reportedly saw them together but took no action, which is suspicious. Then as far as like ship security flaws, he says, and remember he's going back in time, he says like pre 9/11, he says that ID checks were way looser. And he says with 4,000 people on board, someone could leave unnoticed by wearing the right uniform or even blending in. So as far as dangers in the Caribbean ports, he talks about there being violence over trivial amounts of money. That was very common. Victims in drug disputes could be killed and disposed of at sea, taken to other countries like Venezuela. Now an alternate theory they talk about, he was like some passengers use cruise ships to like disappear and start new lives, right? You just kind of like start over, right? He says that if Amy asked the crew or customs to help her vanish, the same mechanisms used for smuggling could definitely make that happen. Now he talks about one reason why people don't hear about this stuff, and it's what we've already discussed. These cruise lines manage their brand image. They don't want any kind of public scrutiny from disappearances or any of the crime that takes place on board. Now he does say as like far as the current state of corruption goes, that Caraco is somewhat cleaner now, but he says that there's like, you know, the political instability, corruption, and you know, it's still there, but it doesn't sound as bad. Now some of the final thoughts that they wrap up with is, you know, obviously, you know, he hopes that Amy maybe just left and started a new life and she's doing something on her own because like the alternative is too grim, whether that be falling over or trafficked or whatever, right? Now he'll also go into the whole thing, which we've heard from several people, and that is that, you know, cruise ships are floating cities. They have the same criminal elements as any city, and they are all driven by what? Money. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to round this out. Now we've gone over a whole bunch of stuff and heard from this and heard from that and blah, 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 blah. Let's get into the theories as to what happened. Okay. Now again, do I know for certain? No. Are we going to look at every angle? Try to. So everybody has a different opinion on this, right? Again, I go back and forth with everything at this point. Now let's talk about first and foremost, accidental overboard, she fell or jumped. Let's just talk about going overboard, either jumped or fell. Okay, now some investigators and commentators suggest that Amy basically, you know, could have fallen over, whether this is accident, by leaning over, she was getting sick, or she deliberately jumped. Some of the evidence that they say supports this is her sandals were left behind in the balcony, the outside table was moved to, you know, where she could climb over the railing, her cigarettes were missing. However, there's inconsistencies with this. Searchers found no trace of her in the water. Personal items, like I just said, like the cigarette lighter, they're missing. That would suggest that she had maybe left voluntarily. Additionally, there's some experts that argue that the ocean current would have brought her body to shore if she'd gone overboard. Okay, so let's pause there for a second. Here's my thought processes on that. Okay, now, again, I'm all big on experts and whatnot, but I also am somebody who's very much on anything can happen. So by them saying like, oh, the thing would have brought her on shore, a lot of things rely on that, and that would be having a definitive, we know exactly when she went over, okay? And that would have been allegedly right now between 5:30 and 6, with the father saying her feet. Now, one thing to keep in mind too is that the door was open, the sliding glass door. I have seen, there's a girl on TikTok who was on the exact ship, and this is like currently going on, that Amy was on. And I want to say stand on the floor beneath Amy's. So she has been giving us tea left and right going around this cruise ship, y'all. She's showing us the door, she's showing us the railing, she's showing us this, she's showing us that. I would love to have her on the podcast, actually. I can't remember how tall she is, but she stands next to the rails. Now, I am sure at this point the tables are different, right? Because the table that they show is different than the one in Netflix. So there's that. She does tests of showing you what it sounds like opening and closing the doors and this and that. And I will say this, it would be very noisy for her to open and close the doors and blah, 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 blah. So if they're saying we woke up and the door thing was open, they would have had to have slept through it. Now, again, am I somebody who's going to sit and say, well, I wouldn't have slept through it, so therefore somebody else went? No. To me, the big red flags with that is the fact that the father was already waking up. I mean, like, they're already kind of going to sleep and whatnot, right? And what I mean by that is if she opened the front door and this door, the sliding glass door is open, it's going to create this like suction, this like wah noise or whatever. I've not been on a cruise, but I'm just going by literally what a person that's standing on that exact boat and other people that have been on them and whatnot are saying. So yes, I can agree, but also, would they have slept through that? We don't know. Secondly, Amy is scared of heights, etc., etc. Okay, I'm somebody who I'll ride a scary roller coaster, but I'm very afraid of heights. To look over the, I mean, it gives me vertigo right now, even thinking about doing it. Looking over the railing, I was just imagining holding the dogs and how scared I would be. Oh my God, like it freaks me out that bad. So what level of that Amy has, even if you're drunk, like you could not pay me to stand on a table and barf over the edge, period. Another thing too is wouldn't there be barf and stuff like down below? Like people could have like been like, hey, we found barf or there's barf here or whatever. And this is, because I do think this, I think it's highly possible that she went overboard. While you couldn't pay me to lean over on the table, I don't know if she would have had to have, because seeing this other person doing it, I'm like, I don't think she would have had to have done that. So there's that. Now, this is going to get grim for a second, okay? Let's pretend that Amy was sick and let's go with she fell over accidentally. Help me out here. It's my understanding that whatever is going on beneath the boat creates a thing that pulls you down. And I guess what I'm getting at is there's highly possible in my mind, my uncredentialed mind, that there would not be pieces of Amy left to float ashore. Maybe something here or there, but because everything was done in such a way, right? Or you fall in and maybe there's a shark and it grabs you and no one's ever seen it again. Remember that high schooler that jumped in the boat or jumped in the water and the shark got him and just gone, never seen before, never seen again, I'm sorry. So I think that could be highly possible. Saying that, because what is it again? Occam's razor or whatever, where it's like the most simplest thing is it's whatever. So yeah, that is a theory that I'm like, yeah, I could see where that happened. Do I think that she jumped overboard? I don't know, Amy. People are very different. As far as tying that in with the whole, my family, forced me on here. They found out I'm gay. I'm unhappy, whatever. I'm going to just take my life over it. Everybody's coming out story is very different. Mine is different than other people's, etc., etc. So I would never sit here and say, well, because mine went this way, then theirs would go this way. People are complicated. I mean, especially with stuff like that, you just never know. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, she wouldn't do this, because I don't know Amy. I trust that listening to her family and friends, and I feel like the way they describe her and what they say about her, she would not have taken her life. But then again, nobody knows what goes on at all behind, with somebody's thought processes. So do I think she could have jumped off? I don't know what you would have done that for, because in that realm, I'm like, would that have really have killed you at that point? You see where I'm going with this? If you're already afraid of water, it's dark, that's not registering me as the way that you would unalive yourself. So for me, is it a possibility that she accidentally fell over? Yes, that is a theory I can get on board with. That doesn't mean that I can't get on board with other theories, but the simplest terms of somehow she fell over, throwing up, whatever, definitely we can put that on the table of possibility to me. When I think about it, does she take her own life? That one, I'm like, ugh, I'm not seeing her intentionally, do that. What if she was talking to the guy next door and she was like, hey, I'm going to come over to your place and go out the front door, and she fell and he doesn't want to say anything? You already hear where people are like, well, I talked to this woman at the thing, but I was in the Navy, and if I'd said something, I'd get in trouble, so I didn't say anything. People can have very simplistic motivations, which are usually around money and reputation. So these, it's as horrible as it might be, these are motivating factors. Now, another theory is that Amy left the ship on her own accord, right? Start a new life, escape stress, whatever. Okay, we don't know, right? And now some of the things that show this, that people are like, hey, this could be it, and this could go two ways with the trafficking and or, is the pattern of IP addresses, that are traced to Barbados, that show, on the big dates and whatnot, somebody's hanging out in there and blah, 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 blah. As far as this goes, I mean, to me, I'm like, that would be really ballsy for somebody to be like, I'm going to get off the boat here and just disappear. Do I think she she could have done it. I don't know what it's like to get on and off a cruise ship. I can only imagine back then it would have been way easier to do it undetected than it would be here. But I will rely on people who have done that to know. Now, here's the other thing. Could she have talked to people on the cruise ship of, I'm going to start a new life. I'm going to get off this boat right here and I'm going to go do this and they can help me. And then she got into something nefarious. Totally could have happened, right? Totally could have happened. Do we think people are going to come forward and say, yo, we're going to help her do this? And blah, blah. No, of course they're not, right? It's just, of course not. So that doesn't really resonate with me as a possibility, but of course they all are. Then we have the kidnapping and human trafficking theory. Okay, now this is the theory that's obviously given the most weight by the family, investigators, the public, and that's that Amy was forcibly taken for the purposes of human trafficking, right? Okay, so this is supported by several things we've already talked about. She's last seen in the company of the yellow dude, okay, and that's kind of shady or whatever, like what really happened there. Some of the cruise ship had allegedly, invited her to bars on the shore and all this kind of stuff, acted oddly to her during the trip, showed her special attention. All these reports coming forth about a woman who resembles Amy, all these different things going on. And then in 2005, like I said, those pictures came forward and that was a huge thing. I mean, that resemblance is major. Now, also all of Amy's pictures in the ship being taken or stolen was really weird. So on the trafficking thing, this is another huge one to me. Okay, so if you ask me my two biggest theories that I go with, it's she accidentally fell over or she was trafficked. Now, how she ended up in the trafficking, I don't know, right? The reasons I believe the trafficking thing could be as equally relevant as falling off is because of the situation with the yellow guy. There's a lot of odd stuff going on there, right? A lot of odd stuff. And the climate of the area going on there, that seedy kind of underground thing or whatever, all of the eyewitness accounts, now, even though I'm said already, like I don't hold eyewitness accounts as like firm or whatever, there's so many of them with similar situations and stories, and also identifying the tattoo that make me think there has to be something credible here. I don't 100% believe the woman who said she had that interaction in the bathroom simply because it seems a lot of very extra, whereas some of the other people's seem more realistic. But even the ones that seem more realistic, they were identifying things about Amy that make me really believe that. I also, like I said in the beginning, believe that if she was trafficked or whatever, got herself into some situation and she can't get out and held captive, all this, then life goes on. You're exploiting her. I don't find it weird that she hasn't tried to reach out because I think that they would have made sure that she doesn't do that. Okay. Now here is the other thing, and I'm just gonna be grim for a moment. So a lot of this stuff with the pictures and this and that are kind of in the past. One thing you have to stop and ask yourself, or I have done with myself, is in the trafficking thing, what would be the reasoning to keep her alive at a certain point? Like what would take place, right? Now, many different things can happen. Obviously, I'm no expert, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, at a certain point, they're not going to be able to exploit her. So they're going to need to get rid of her. And especially if she gets all this public scrutiny, especially right now. So pretend that she was alive and under their control now and all this attention came. What do you think they're going to want to do with her, right? So I think it's good to have all these eyes there. If that is the situation, I think it could also be, whatever. So I think that if she was trafficked, and I don't know how that world works, but if they got to the point where, hey, we can't necessarily use her for, physical exploitation, if you will, we're going to use you maybe as a drug mule, maybe as this, like who knows? I think that there will be a shelf life in that world. And I think some things could extend it if she was popular or if she was then helping recruit. And I'm not trying to say that in a negative way, like, oh, she's done something wrong. Obviously, I'm doing this under the thought process of they're forcing her to do that in order for her to stay alive, right? So, but her sitting here and saying the things, allegedly, if it was her, I should say, I owe them money, can you help me? Can you do this? Can you do that? These are major telltale signs of like, yeah. And I could see if it was some like American person, like on foreign soil, and they heard this being like, is this a scam? Is this how they're trying to get $200 from me? You see what I'm saying? When it legitimately could have been somebody reaching out for help. So that's my thought process on the trafficking thing. I think if she was trafficked, I think that would be, what would you do? I don't think they're just going to let you go, right? Now, also in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what if one of them I come up with the whole story, y'all, okay? And it's like pretty naive on my part where I'm like, well, what if one of the persons that was doing it developed feelings for her? I don't know, maybe they had a kid and that's what they were doing to exploit. And then they're like, you've done such a good job, we'll just let you live quietly over here. I mean, you would think, right, that I wouldn't be this naive, but it's maybe hopeful because I just don't think the trafficking thing would have ended well for her, especially when she got tons of attention, and especially if she was obviously willing to go to people and be like, hey, will you help me do blah, 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 blah. Now, who knows what kind of punishment came down if that was the case, right? So trafficking, major possibility. Accidentally falling overboard, major possibility. Let's keep going. Now, there's also the whole thing about foul play by other people on the ship. So again, this ties back to the dude Yellow, right? That, you know, maybe he drugged her, did something, you know, whatever, right? Remember, the witnesses say that she was seen with Yellow, Alistair Douglas, in the hours prior to her disappearance. Now, there was, you know, an inconclusive polygraph, lack of like direct evidence, etc., etc. However, nonetheless, okay, this is still a thing of like, he drugged her, they somehow got her off the ship, they could put her in something took place. Now on this, let's go down this rabbit hole for a minute. Let's say she wasn't trafficked. Let's say she had an encounter with him. Let's say he did drug her. Let's say he did do something to her and he killed her. And then he got rid of her body, or he threw her overboard and her body did whatever it does. Like, we don't know, right? Do I think that's a possibility? Absolutely. You know, these ships, I mean, I don't know what they're like, but come on, you know, you can get rid of a body. Now, if he had done that and they did the search, you know, but it's all the timing of it. Again, so much of this would not be an issue if the cruise ship had stopped and done a massive search and calling and like immediately treated it seriously. We probably would not be having this conversation. I saw another person, and I think this is another TikTok, so just bear with me here, where they were on a cruise ship and they did the, hey, someone's missing. Or no, this was a person recounting they were on a cruise ship when a crew member fell overboard. But this was like, we all knew, like somebody saw it happen, it was reported instantly. And they were basically like, we're almost in port. And basically everyone on the ship, like the ship was like, we need everybody to this side, eyes on the water to find this person. And their point was, you're talking thousands of eyes, we're near shore, and the body was never discovered. Body was never found. Instantly reported. Yeah, so this was, her TikTok was in the reasoning of the whole thing of, oh, something would have washed ashore, something would have washed ashore. No, it necessarily wouldn't have, right? Okay. Let's keep going. Now again, you know, tying in with the other ones is the whole theory of she was killed on board, either thrown over, disposed at sea, whatnot, right? But there's been no evidence to really back that up. So, you know, there's that. It's unconfirmed as well. Her being targeted by traffickers, like because they took a special interest in her looks and whatnot, you know, I don't know how that would work. I don't know if it's that rampant on these ships where they single out people and they're like, we're going after her. I don't know. You know, but that's kind of prevalent in all the little theories and whatnot. So that being said, we're gonna wrap this up with some final thoughts. My heart breaks for everybody involved. I can't imagine what she went through or what she's going through, what happened to her. It's what literal nightmare fuel. Right? So do I believe, let's just revisit a few things. Do I believe that that's her in the pictures? I can't say. I want to believe it is, but then like if I say that, that's a grim existence. And even if it was her in the pictures, where would she be now? Right? Because you're talking about something like from a minute ago. So again, this is almost like well, there might have been something back then, but I mean, would people really keep someone alive at that point? Imagine the life. Do I believe that she could have fallen over the ship? Very likely. That could be what the simplest thing. You know, she could have done something. She could have been like, I'm going to, you know, throw up, or I'm going to look overboard. I'm going to get whatever. And she accidentally slipped and fell, you know, and it was quiet in the night. Nobody said anything and her body just whatever, you know, and that could be the literal simplest thing. And then the eyewitnesses that we hear of, they are just false remembering. Eyewitness testimony is usually not very good to go on. However, I do tend to believe some of these eyewitnesses because it does sound credible, but I've seen other things where it sounded all that way and then it ended up not being. So at the end of the day, I think unfortunately, if Amy is alive and capable of reaching out, I do not think she would at this point. And that's not to fault her, but I just think that she could have started a whole other life. Let's pretend she got out of the trafficking situation, whatever that case may be, and she started something. She's like, no, I have, you know, I'm doing this over here. Yeah, we had this weird family stuff going on, so you know what, I'm good. Or she could be in a very dangerous situation and still not be able to get out of it, and she's stuck in it, or she could have been, and then they killed her and got rid of her, or she could have just fallen over the boat. We most likely will probably never know, but I do feel confident that with this attention on it and seeing TikTok do their thing, if there is going to be answers that come, it will be now. And I would say if this much attention goes and nothing comes from it, I would lean more towards her body having gone over the ship. Now that could be at the hands of Yellow, right? There's so many nuances to each potential theory with this that it makes it difficult to hone in on one. But I do know it's tragic. I also know with Netflix, you see where there's so much information that they discard or don't put in or don't put out. So, you know, do with that what you will. And keep that in mind, it's not just Netflix, it's any docuseries, okay? So, that being said, this is very long. I appreciate it if you're still watching. Please drop off. I'm dying to hear your opinions on stuff. Okay. And if you have like direct me to interviews, drop it in the comment section or email me. It's in the description box below. I am literally just like consuming the Amy Bradley stuff everywhere I get it. So let me know, please. Thank you again for watching this long. I do appreciate it. While you're in the comment section doing all that homework I love for you, if you could drop some little sofas off for myself, Roscoe and Spirit, Bo and Luke, and of course you, the Sofa Squad, I do appreciate it. So we'll have a place to sit down there and talk about the Amy Bradley case, Tiffany Slate, and all the cases we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we get around there to do that, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Ross on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.